And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's go out now to the Middle East. Live picture there over Jerusalem. Well, this is what we know. Israel facing sharp criticism as it stopped the entry of all food and other supplies into Gaza Sunday and warned of, quote, additional consequences for Hamas if a fragile ceasefire is not extended. Now, mediators in Egypt and Qatar accused Israel of violating humanitarian law by using starvation as a weapon, though Israel saying Sunday that a new U.S. proposal calls for extending the ceasefire through Ramadan and the Jewish Passover holiday, which ends on April the 20th. Now, under that proposal, Hamas would release half the hostages on the first day and the rest when an agreement is reached on a permanent ceasefire, according to Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. He thanked the Trump administration for working to extend phase one of this. Let's watch.
President Trump for his unwavering support for Israel. During my recent visit to Washington, I said that Donald Trump is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And President Trump shows that friendship each and every day. He has shown it through his visionary plan for Gaza. This is a plan which Israel fully supports. He's shown it by sending us all the munitions that were being held up. This way, he's giving Israel the tools we need to finish the job against Iran's terror axis. And he has shown it by fully backing Israel and putting the pressure to release the hostages where it truly belongs, on Hamas. Israel has accepted President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff's plan to extend the temporary ceasefire by 50 days. During that time, we can discuss the conditions for a permanent ceasefire that will end the war in Gaza. In Witkoff's plan, half of the hostages would be released right away, and the remaining half would be released if we reach an agreement on a permanent ceasefire. Again, Israel has accepted this plan. I accepted this plan. But so far, Hamas has rejected it. Hamas had also put forward positions for a permanent ceasefire that are totally unacceptable. Israel has decided to stop letting goods and supplies into Gaza, something we've done for the past 42 days. We've done that because Hamas steals the supplies and prevents the people of Gaza from getting them. It uses these supplies to finance its terror machine, which is aimed directly at Israel and our civilians, and this we cannot accept. We will take further steps if Hamas continues to hold our hostages. And throughout this, Israel knows that America and President Trump have our back. Thank you again, President Trump. Thank you for all you're doing to return our hostages, bolster our security, and provide a future of prosperity and peace for all the peoples of the Middle East.
All right, that was Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. In the meantime here, we do want to bring into the conversation there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Ben Cohen. He joins me. Ben, thanks for being with us here. You and I have discussed this so often. It's kind of dizzying to know where to start with the latest in these negotiations. I guess the common through line now, and what has been throughout the course of these more than 500 days, is Hamas rejecting another iteration of this. And we can go into the reasons why, but they want nothing to do with extending phase one of the ceasefire. Why?
Well, I think that the primary reason is Hamas doesn't have a huge amount of leverage left in this conflict. You've got to remember that their leadership has been destroyed over the past 18 months. They haven't been completely decimated on the ground, but they've suffered serious damage from Israel's onslaught since October 2023. So the only piece of leverage they have left, Andrew, are these hostages. And there is, I think, justifiable skepticism in Israel that because this is the only leverage they have left, that they will release the hostages. And I think that's, securing those releases is a priority for the Israeli government and certainly for the Israeli people. You can't walk down the street in Israel these days without seeing posters, pictures of the hostages, pleas for their return. And I think Israel has run out of patience by this point.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like negotiations are going to be going at all for phase two of the ceasefire, this framework that was agreed to. In phase two, and we've talked about phase two, Hamas would release dozens of remaining hostages in return for an Israeli pullout from Gaza and a lasting ceasefire here. So from Israel's standpoint, and I don't want to kind of echo what Hamas is thinking here, but I'm going to try, is that Israel wants all the hostages released under an extension of phase one so they don't have to pull out of Gaza and end the war here. Is that what they're thinking?
Well, their thinking is that vacating Gaza at this point with the hostages, you still have 59 hostages there, 24 of whom I believe are believed to still be alive. So I think they're loath to withdraw from Gaza fully while that is the case. And the other issue that they're considering is the governance of Gaza post-war. The danger of a full Israeli withdrawal now is twofold. One, as I said, that not all the hostages will be released. But secondly, that Hamas will find a way to wriggle its way back into power or to maintain its power in Gaza. And Israel has made clear that any future Gaza cannot have a Hamas component. This administration in the United States also has that position. So I think what you're seeing in terms of Hamas being reluctant to extend the ceasefire under President Trump's envoy's proposal, Steve Witkoff's proposal, is because they worry that this is going to lead an being removed from power. And that, when push comes to shove, is a more important consideration for Hamas than the welfare of the people in Gaza.
So just because Israel cuts off all humanitarian aid, do other groups have the opportunity to get aid into Gaza, but for Israel, or no?
Well, theoretically, aid could come in through the Egyptian border. But again, I think Israel is going to be reluctant to see either the Israeli crossings or the Egyptian crossings into Gaza utilized for aid deliveries while Hamas continues to release the remaining hostages. But I think, Andrew, as well, the other point to bear in mind here is that there isn't an immediate crisis about to descend. The Hamas's own media office in Gaza today said that there was enough food in that coastal enclave for several weeks. So I think it's going to be at least 2 weeks before we hit something that approximates a crisis. I think the other point to bear in mind is we've been in this position before, right after October the 7th, the day at 2023, the day that Hamas unleashed its rapists and murderers on a rampage through southern Israel. Israel did the same thing. It cut off aid. It cut off electricity. And then within about 2 weeks, those services had been restored. So I would see this, based on previous Israeli behavior, not as a permanent suspension of aid, but as a negotiating tactic to try and get Hamas, and more importantly, Hamas's backers, and specifically in that regard, the Emirate of Qatar, to put pressure on Hamas to release these hostages and thereby allow the aid to flow back into Gaza.
I mean, if Hamas is saying, they're good food-wise for the next several weeks, it seems like there's a disconnect there. Egypt and Qatar accusing Israel of violating humanitarian law by using starvation as a weapon. That was one of the predicates as well for how and why the International Criminal Court brought arrest warrants against Bibi Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant here. So I thought that was somewhat interesting here. I want to put this up. So Amichai Stein, he's a good source there on social media. He quotes the National Security Council spokesperson, Brian Hughes, who told the Jerusalem Post this: "We will support their," meaning Israel's, "decision on next steps, given Hamas has indicated it's no longer interested in a negotiated ceasefire." Netanyahu saying Israel is fully coordinated with the Trump administration, and the ceasefire will only continue as long as Hamas keeps releasing hostages. So it seems like, Ben, that the Trump administration is giving the Netanyahu government a lot of latitude to do what they think needs to be done in this period. So does that mean the fighting picks back up? If there's no ceasefire in place right now, can Israel, if it wanted to, start their arms again? Yeah,
they can do. And in fact, the defense minister, Israel Katz, was saying today that Israel is capable of unleashing hell in Gaza if it wants to. And I think we could come to that point, in a week or two, if there is no movement on the release of hostages. I think Israel, geopolitically now, with a change of administration in the United States, does see an opportunity to continue this war to its goal of defeating Hamas. So yes, there is a strong chance that this war could resume. But I think if Hamas wants to avoid that and wants to push the Israelis into a corner where they can't justify a return to armed conflict, then the only thing that they can do is release the hostages.
All right, Ben Cohen, as always, we thank you for your expertise and analysis into this part of the world. But it does seem like there is some type of back to square one quality about the ceasefire and hostage negotiations and the deal that was in place here. So we'll just have to follow it. Thanks so much, Ben.